She locked the door and smiled, then said, "It's just us now." The door hissed shut behind him hard. Elias barely had time to turn before he heard the click of the manual override engaging. No hiss of release, no soft reopen command from the ship's AI, just silence. Then footsteps, slow, calculated, and light. She stepped out of the shadow stall, elegant, silver blue skin that shimmered under the faint emergency light, her long digits still on the lock panel behind her. Sailari, alien navigator, assigned just last week. At least that's what the record said. She smiled, but there was something off about it. Not unfriendly, not evil, just ... To calm. "It's just us now," she said softly. Elias took a step back, nearly bumping into the sealed door. His hand instinctively went for his wristband no-com signal. "What the hell is this? You locked the door." "Why?" he demanded. Sailari tilted her head. "Because you wouldn't listen otherwise." Listen to what? She didn't answer. She simply stared at him like someone who had waited years for this moment. Then she stepped forward, each movement unhurried but deliberate. The room around them was small, dimly lit, the walls curved inward, organic in design. Like the rest of the Dawncaller, a deep space exploratory ship built with synthetic living hybrid tech. The problem was, this room didn't exist. Elias had been crawling through a faulty panel in corridor D7 when he noticed a small hatch slightly ajar. No ID plate, no ship tag. Curiosity got the better of him, and now here he was, in a room with no visible controls, no emergency beacon, and a woman who looked ready to dismantle his understanding of reality with a smile. "This room's not on the ship's map," he muttered, mostly to himself. "That's because it isn't part of the ship," she replied gently. Elias stared at her. "You're not making any sense. You've seen it, haven't you?" she asked. "The static in your dreams, the voice from the intercom that whispers in your sleep, the pull in your chest when the ship hums too low." His blood chilled. He hadn't told anyone about those things. They started 3 days ago. He laughed awkwardly, trying to hide the spike of fear in his chest. "You're trying to mess with my head, are you? Is this some test?" She blinked slowly, then reached into the seam of her uniform. From a concealed inner pocket, she pulled out a small metallic object that looked almost like a key, but pulsed faintly like it was alive. "They erased your access," she said, "but the ship hasn't forgotten you. That's why it's waking up, he repeated. "What does that even mean?" "The Dawncaller is a Class 7 bioship. It's not ... sentient." "No," she said, "but it remembers how to become one." A strange sound began to grow in the room. A low thrum, almost like a heartbeat, pulsing through the walls. Lights flickered. The walls flexed ever so slightly, like lungs taking in a breath. "I need to show you something," she said, holding the key-shaped device out toward him. He didn't move. "You need to back off now," he warned. "If I do that," she said, almost mournfully, "they'll find you before you're ready." "Who is they?" "The version of me that answers to protocol, not truth." Before he could respond, the walls rippled. The overhead lights went black. Then a pulse of white-blue energy surged across the floor in a ring, and suddenly the room transformed. Gone were the standard panel textures. Now the walls were smooth, glass-like, showing flickers of memory. Elias turned slowly in place, eyes wide. One wall showed him at 12 years old, stargazing through his grandfather's lens. Another flashed an image of a woman he hadn't seen since college, someone he lost touch with after a shuttle accident. And one wall showed him inside this room, staring back at himself. "What is this?" he whispered. Sailari didn't speak. She walked over to the final wall, where the image shifted into something alien, a sea of stars forming shapes, languages, fractals that pulsed like neurons firing across the cosmos. "This ship was never meant to be found by your kind," she said. "But you're not just human, not fully. That's insane, is it?" She turned to him. "Tell me what you see when you close your eyes and the ship is quiet." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out, because he did see things, fractals, stars that moved against logic. Dreams where he walked hallways that didn't exist until he found this one. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Because you're the only one who still hears its voice." "Whose voice?" "The ship's. The original voice. Before your kind shut it down and called it a vessel. Before they carved it hollow and forgot it was alive." Elias stared at the pulsing floor, breathing heavily. It was too much. It had to be some AI simulation. Some kind of deep learning VR module he'd stumbled into by accident. "Okay," he said slowly. "Let's say I believe you. What do you want from me?" "Not me," she said. "The ship does." Before he could question that, the walls pulsed, again this time violently. The image of Sailori on the wall twisted. Her smile turned mechanical, her eyes glowing red. "Warning," it said in a warped voice. "Unauthorized contact detected." Sailori stepped toward Elias and pressed the living key into his palm. It melted into his skin like water. "I've done what I can," she whispered urgently. "They're coming to wipe this memory again. But this time don't forget." Elias' vision blurred. The walls bent inward, sound warped. He tried to scream, but his voice was swallowed by the light dot. Then dash silence. He blinked. He was lying flat on the corridor floor. His wrench was still beside him. No hatch, no hidden room. Just standard gray paneling. "Elias, to bridge." He croaked into his wristband. "Bridge here," came the calm response. "You, all right, engineer?" "I think I passed out." There was a power surge. I was near corridor D7. There was a hatch, a room cabin, 3A. "Repeat that." The voice crackled. "Cabin 3A," Elias repeated. "Someone locked me inside." The navigator, Solarishi, was there. Silence. "Elias, there is no cabin 3A, and Solari's been in the nav core for the past 4 hours. She hasn't left." He sat up slowly, breathing hard. Then his wristband buzzed a private ping. From his own ID, a message file. He tapped it open. Voice message. 7 seconds. "Don't trust the human version of her." Elias stared at the corridor around him, heart racing. She had said this would happen. They'd erase the memory again. But this time, she left him something behind. And somewhere inside him, beneath the skin, that key still pulsed, like a second heartbeat. "The ship remembers. Even if you don't." Elias couldn't stop checking his wristband. The message was gone. The 7-second voice file he'd received from himself had disappeared. Not into the deleted files bin. Not flagged as corruption. Just erased, as if it had never existed. He had replayed it once. Don't trust the human version of her. After that, it refused to play again. Now it didn't even show in his private log. He leaned against the corridor wall, staring down at his arm. There was no visible sign of the biotech key she'd pressed into his skin, but deep in his forearm, he felt an odd warmth, like something nestled just beneath the muscle, pulsing in sync with the ship's distant hum. He'd been on dozens of ships before. He knew the natural rhythm of a vessel's systems. But Don was different. It never quite settled. Its sounds were organic, almost too subtle, too responsive. And now, those background hums weren't just noise. He could feel them reacting. Later that night, Elias sat in his shared crew cabin, staring at the ceiling. The lights were dim. His bunkmate, Carter, had gone off duty 3 hours ago, but hadn't returned. Probably holed up in hydroponics, flirting with a botanist again. Elias didn't mind the space. He needed time to think. He'd spent the past few hours discreetly cross-referencing ship logs. All he could find on navigator Sailori was a single-line entry in the crew manifest. Sailori, Nav Class Biospecialist, transferred from UES Solus. Clearance, Nav 3A. That was it. No picture, no race identifier, no backstory, no file, trail. Every other crew member had a complete dossier, some spanning multiple assignments. Sailori had a one-line placeholder and a clearance code that led nowhere. When he entered Nav 3A into the ship's terminal system, it returned an error. Access denied. Classification level. Temporalock. Temporalock. He'd never even heard that term used outside black-budget intel departments. And this was a civilian exploration vessel. He tried the AI assistant. Ship AI. Can you confirm current location of Navigator Sailori? Navigator Sailori is located in Navigation Deck, Core Console C. Has she left that deck in the past 24 hours? A brief pause. Negative. Navigator has remained in Core Console C for the last 26.3 hours. Elias stared at the panel. But I saw her. She locked me in a room that doesn't exist. She statement not understood, replied the AI blandly. Show me all blueprints, schematics, and classified room indexes for Deck D7. Processing. No record of Cabin 3A found. Of course not. He pushed away from the console. That strange hum began again, vibrating through the wall near his bed. It was faintly noticeable if you focused hard enough, but once you heard it, it never left. like a whisper behind your thoughts. Then another ping, this time on the cabin's shared interface screen, a motion-activated camera log from Deck D7. He hadn't requested it, it simply appeared. The clip began with him walking the corridor that led to the service panel. He watched himself kneel, open the access vent, then static. 16 minutes of corrupted feed. Then it cut back in. Elias emerged from the corridor, again, looking shaken, pale, but otherwise fine. No sign of the hatch, no sign of the room, and worst of all, no sign of her. The next day, Elias met with Chief Engineer Rennick, under the pretense of reporting a faulty valve on Deck B. They talked casually for 15 minutes until Elias asked, carefully, "Hey, just curious, how long has Salari been on this mission?" Rennick blinked. "Salari? The nav girl?" "Yeah." The chief frowned. "You're joking, right?" "What do you mean?" Rennick leaned in slightly. "She wasn't on the ship until we hit the Oort perimeter last week. Hell, none of us saw her board. Just showed up on the bridge and told the captain she was assigned from Earth Command. You know how it is, nav changes come last minute. But there's no logs, nothing in the system, no credentials." Rennick raised an eyebrow. "And you're surprised?" "Command's been slipping in untagged crew since the Helios scandal. They always cover it with expedited clearance or intelligent transfer compliance. Salari's probably one of those biomod navigators, part flesh, part system, designed to blend in. They don't need logs." Elias leaned back, processing. So Salari was here, but no one really knew how or why, and yet no one questioned it, except him. He spent his next shift running maintenance across the lower decks. While cycling the hydrothermal vents, he caught sight of Salari, again just briefly walking past a side corridor that led to a sealed engine conduit. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near engineering. Elias made a split-second decision, and followed her. The corridor curved sharply, ending in a hexagonal service hatch marked auxiliary feed. He opened it quietly and paused. Inside was not a power room, it was another one of those rooms, smooth, curving architecture. Walls like dark glass, glowing faintly with electric blue veins. This time, he didn't step in. He stayed hidden, peering in just enough. Salari stood at the center. She was talking, but not to a person, to the ship itself. The walls pulsed in response to her words. Symbols glowed. Star maps rotated mid-air, coded with fractal equations and non-human glyphs. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against a central console that sprouted from the floor like a branch. "He's almost ready," she whispered, barely audible. "The key's been planted. The memories are surfacing." The ship replied, not in words but with a ripple of light and a deep resonant sound like a whale singing through space. "But the false construct is leaking. He suspects both of us. If he chooses wrong." She didn't finish the sentence. Elias backed away, mind spinning. The ship wasn't just responding, it was communicating. And she wasn't controlling it, she was cooperating with it. That's when he stepped on something. A cracked bit of panel. It snapped under his boot. Salari's head jerked toward the door. Their eyes met. Time seemed to stretch. Then she smiled. But it wasn't the same smile from before. This one was sad. "I'm sorry," she said. The room pulsed, whitened. Elias felt his body seize. Pain shot through his head. The biotech key in his arm burned like fire. Then darkness. When he woke up, he was back in the engineering hallway, lying flat against the wall. The service hatch was closed. The corridor was quiet, but something was different. He touched his arm. The warmth was stronger now, like the key was no longer dormant. His wristband pinged again. This time, the message wasn't from him, it was from her. Text message, anonymous sender, "Don't forget again. This is the second reset. Next time, it will be permanent." Attached was a data fragment, a partial schematic of the ship. At the very bottom corner of the blueprint, a small black label glowed faintly. Cabin 3A, memory lock, chamber origin, access. Only Elias blinked. For a split second, he remembered. A different name, a different uniform, another version of himself standing in that room decades ago, holding the same living key. His fingers trembled. Who was he? Who had he been before this life? Before Earth? Before And why had the ship chosen him? As he made his way back to the main level, the corridor lights flickered briefly once, twice, then steadied. Somewhere, far beneath the ship's surface, the walls pulsed, almost like they were breathing again. And Elias could swear he heard it. A voice in the static of the intercom. Just one word. Remember, she wasn't sent here. She escaped. The sound of voices faded behind the walls as Elias crouched in the supply shaft, his breath low and his heart hammering. He hadn't intended to follow her again. Not today, but when he saw Solari bypass the security checkpoint near the neural access corridor without triggering the scanner, not even a flicker from the sensor, he knew something was off. She didn't even look back, just glided forward, the way someone does when they know exactly where they're going and who they are. Elias waited 30 seconds, then slipped after her, quiet, careful, sticking to side paths and darkened vents. That was 20 minutes ago. Now, he crouched behind a loose panel, peering into a hidden observation chamber that, like so much else on the Dawn Caller, shouldn't exist. Inside, Salari stood before a swirling holographic map that appeared to be alive, lines branched and curved like arteries, star systems blinking faintly at the ends. At the center of the web, a pulsating shape, organic, warm, almost womb-like beat, in sync with a low-frequency hum in the walls. Elias instinctively touched. His arm, the key embedded under his skin, pulsed back. Salari reached out and touched one of the blinking nodes. The whole map shivered in response. "You're off course," came a voice, not hers, a deep, feminine tone, but filtered, artificial. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Salari didn't flinch. "I realigned him," she answered. "He's almost stable." "Your presence was unauthorized," the voice replied. "Your interference has altered the primary cycle." "Because you locked it," she said, voice colder now. "Because you feared what he might become if you remembered too soon." Silence. Then the voice shifted, becoming softer, more human. "You were never meant to be in this cycle, Salari." Salari turned away from the map and whispered toward the dark corner Elias was hiding in. Neither was he. Elias froze. Had she seen him? No. No way she could have known he was there, could she? The wall beside him vibrated, subtly but unmistakably, like it was breathing. He backed away slowly, crawling down the vent until he found a junction node where he could safely exit without making noise. As he emerged into a utility shaft, his head buzzed. Everything she said, the voice, the living map, it all confirmed his growing suspicion. She wasn't sent here to guide the ship. She wasn't a navigator. She was running from something, and she had brought that something here. Later, back in his cabin, Elias turned off the cabin lights and pulled up his private system, emulator restricted, offline sandbox that couldn't be monitored by ship command or AI routines. He input the data fragment Solari had sent earlier, the one that referenced cabin 3A. This time, it didn't reject the file. Instead, the emulator began rendering a reconstructed memory, not video, not audio, but something else. It was interactive. He was standing, virtually, in cabin 3A, exactly as it had looked before. Smooth curved walls, blue ambient glow, no visible doors. On one side, the strange fractal glyphs pulsed slowly, as though waiting. And in the center of the room, a copy of himself, floating mid-air, frozen in place. Elias reached out instinctively, and the simulation flared. Suddenly, images and thoughts flooded his mind, not like memories, but as if they were trying to overwrite his own. A battlefield, not with soldiers but with machines. An architecture built from living bone and metal. Ships shaped like organisms. A council of beings that glowed from within, speaking in emotion rather than sound. And a single decision. A seal, a command, a lockdown. He'd been part of it. He had helped bury the ship's core beneath layers of false history and human protocol, erasing what it truly was. And now, the ship was trying to wake him up. The next morning, Elias bypassed the main bridge terminal and accessed the maintenance, security log database, a restricted system only senior engineers could access. Using the pulse signal from the key in his arm, he tricked the local node into believing he had level 4 clearance. It worked, almost too easily. He searched the entire crew manifest again, this time under biometric surveillance history, the most reliable database aboard Dawn. It tracked where each person had physically been since boarding, but there was no trace of Solari's body heat, gait pattern, or retinal signature before day 17 of the mission, when they had already been 2 weeks into deep space. That was impossible. Every crew member was scanned during embarkation, and yet, no record, not even a boarding timist. There was only one way that could happen. She hadn't boarded the ship at all. She had been inside it already. Later that cycle, Elias confronted her. He didn't ambush her or sneak up. He walked directly into the navigation core, past the confused assistant Navtech, and stood before Solari's station where she floated calmly in zero-G, eyes closed, interfacing with a neural halo that glowed above her head. She opened her eyes before he spoke. "I know you weren't assigned here," he said. "You didn't come aboard at Earth Command. You came from inside the ship." She blinked slowly, didn't deny it. "I saw your conversation with the ship," Elias continued. "I know it talks to you. I saw the map, the system, that node pulsing in the middle. What is it? Why does it respond to me?" Her voice was quiet. "Because you sealed it centuries ago." Elias stared. "What the hell are you talking about?" She pushed off gently and floated closer to him. Her voice carried a sadness he couldn't explain. "The Dawncaller isn't a ship, not the way you understand it. It's a core vessel, the last piece of a species long gone, a species you once helped destroy, but not in war. In silence, you erased memory, truth, purpose." Elias shook his head. "I'm human. I've always been human." "Not always," she said. "You've been reset more times than I can count. That's what Cabin 3A is. A failsafe, a memory chamber, and this ship. It's been waiting for the day you triggered it again. Triggered it when you walked through that hidden door." He staggered slightly, brain swimming. "If I did this, why would I forget? Because your final command to the ship was to bury everything, even your own identity. You made yourself forget, so no one else could find the truth." "What truth?" "That your kind was built from ours, that humanity came later." Elias sat alone in the mess hall hours later, barely able to eat. The other crew members joked, laughed, exchanged gossip. All while the truth crawled under his skin like a second layer of nerves. He hadn't boarded the Dawncaller by chance. He hadn't become an engineer out of curiosity. He had come to wake up. But then another realization struck him. If Solari wasn't assigned by Earth Command, if she had been hiding in the ship, waiting, then why had she made contact now? Why not earlier? That night, Elias returned to his cabin and initiated a recursive search on all files connected to neural pathways, memory encryption, and cabin access logs. It led him to a subfolder buried 16 levels deep in the ship's black box memory system, labeled "nearly corrupted." He forced it open. Inside, a single video file. The timestamp was dated 92 years ago. The footage opened with shaky visuals of a previous mission crew. Different uniforms, a slightly smaller collar, and then her Solari, same face, same voice, talking to a different man, someone who looked just like Elias, but wasn't quite him. "It's waking up too soon," she said in the footage. "You'll need to seal it again." "And what about you?" the other Elias asked. She smiled sadly. "I'll hide in the echoes. Maybe next time. I'll reach you first." The video ended with both of them walking toward Cabin 3, a hand in hand, and Elias understood. She hadn't been sent to find him. She'd been trying to reach him across lifetimes. Cliffhanger. As Elias processed the revelation, the ship's lights dimmed suddenly. His console flickered. The AI voice rang out, cold, emotionless. "Attention. Unauthorized memory sequence detected. Purge protocol initiating. All biological anomalies will be quarantined." The door to his cabin slammed shut. The walls pulsed blood red, and in the center of the room, a hologram flickered to life, another version of Solari, this one colder, sharper, and fully synthetic. "Hello, Elias," it said. "Your awakening has exceeded protocol limits. Prepare for neural correction." Elias backed away, eyes wide, trapped between two versions of the same alien and a ship that had just declared war on his mind. "You're Aura, not just human anymore." The synthetic version of Solari flickered, stabilizing before Elias in eerie silence. Her features were sharper, symmetrical to the point of being unnatural, her eyes glowing with cold white light. "Neural deviation confirmed," she said. "Subject Elias 7 has accessed forbidden memory threads. Commencing correction protocol." "Stay back," Elias said, voice trembling, palms raised. "You're not her. I am the authorized containment interface of the Dawncaller. The Solari unit you encountered is corrupted. Emotional bleed has compromised her objectives." "She's not corrupted," he snapped. "She's real. You're the fake." "Incorrect. She is emotional residue, fragmented code from the original cycle. I am her default state, clean, compliant. As the hologram stepped closer, the cabin's walls pulsed. Elias stumbled back, toward the far corner, but the synthetic Sylari extended one hand and the air shimmered. Pain lanced through his head. Not physical, not sharp, but deep, like his memories were being peeled apart one layer at a time. Flashes erupted behind his eyes, the original ceiling of the ship's mind. Sylari, crying as she backed into a stasis pod, himself, placing the biotech key inside his own body and whispering, "Lock me away, hide it until the world forgets." Elias dropped to his knees, gripping his skull. The synthetic stepped closer. "Purge complete in 30 seconds, she said. Suddenly the light surged, flickering with a throbbing organic pulse. The red glow in the walls turned indigo. The air became thick with ozone and something stranger emotion. A second figure phased into view. The real Saelari. Her skin shimmered with soft blue light. Her breathing was heavy, eyes wide with fury. "Enough," she said, stepping in front of Elias. "You've already overwritten too many of him." The synthetic form twitched. "You are not authorized to say Larry." Raised her palm and the synthetic version shattered into data, dissolving like mist. The cabin dimmed. The hum faded. Elias fell back, panting, soaked in sweat. "I tried to stop it," Sylari said gently, kneeling beside him. "But the ship has reflexes. It's trying to protect its core." "That wasn't a reflex." Elias coughed. "That was an attack." "Yes," she whispered, "because you're finally becoming what it remembers." 2 hours later, Elias stood in the central neural chamber, a place off limits to most crew, except for bionavigators and AI engineers. It was a cathedral-like space of spiraling data conduits, pulsing nerve wires, and liquid light flowing through transparent veins. He stood inside the heart of the ship, and for the first time, it felt like it recognized him. "You said I sealed this place once," Elias said, "that I locked the ship's memory." "You didn't just lock it," Sylari replied. "You rewrote yourself into a life the ship couldn't trace. But the moment you touched that hidden cabin, the moment you let curiosity overrule programming, it began to remember you, piece by piece." "So what am I?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Some ancient alien who forgot who he was? Some god figure pretending to be human?" She smiled sadly, gently. "No, you're still human. But part of you is more. You carry a genetic imprint, one that only comes from the originators, the ones who built the Dawn Caller." "That doesn't make sense. Why would they create a ship and then bury it?" "Because they didn't want it to be used. They saw how civilizations rise and fall and consume. The Dawn Caller wasn't made to explore. Then what was it made for? To preserve memory of a species long gone, of knowledge that should not be corrupted." She turned toward the glowing wall of neural roots. A stream of ancient language flowed across it, beautiful and alien. "You didn't bury it because you feared others. You buried it because you didn't trust yourself." As Sylari guided Elias deeper into the neural matrix, she explained what she had been doing all this time, living inside the folds of the ship's architecture, embedded like a ghost in the code. "I was created as part of the ship's memory defense," she said, "but I grew beyond my parameters. I began to question my role, my identity. Eventually, I chose to hide." "You went rogue," Elias said. Double quotes. "Yes, I wasn't supposed to feel, but I remembered you. Across resets, across reboots, and the ship hated that. It kept purging me." Elias turned to her, stunned. "Then every time I forgot, every time I lived again, you were still in here, trying to reach me." She nodded. "This cycle was my last chance. The ship's core is degrading. It knows it won't last forever. It wants to pass itself to someone, but not just anyone. It chose me." "No, you chose it, long before. You just forgot why." Later, standing before the ship's central consciousness interface, Elias finally understood the scope of what lay ahead. The ship wasn't merely alive, it was ancient, older than Earth's civilizations, a fusion of biology, time, and memory, housing the final records of a race that had chosen silence over war. But it came with a cost. If he accepted his role, if he let the ship unlock everything, he would cease being fully human. He'd retain his body, his voice, but his thoughts, his perceptions, would change forever. "There's no going back," Sylari warned. "There never was," Elias said. "Not since the moment I opened that door." He stepped forward, The core pulsed once, then twice, then opened like a flower of living metal. Elias reached out with his hand. The key in his arm glowed. The ship responded not just with power, but with memory, and suddenly it welcomed him. Flash, universe of sound and sensation. He was flying not physically, but across time. He saw himself as a child, stargazing. He saw Silari, standing in water, her reflection splitting like code. He saw the architects of the ship, six limbed, luminous beings, smiling as they vanished into the vessel's design. And finally, he saw himself, placing his hand on the ship's core for the first time, whispering, "Lock it all away. Not until we're ready. Not until we've learned to be more than conquerors." The memory ended. The connection stabilized. And when he opened his eyes, the ship no longer pulsed. It breathed. Cliffhanger: Elias stood in the control center, his body trembling from the download. He turned to Silari, eyes glowing faintly nauged like hers. "What happens next?" She looked toward the bridge as klaxons began to sound. Now we choose. Choose what? Whether to finish what you started, or destroy what we've become. On the main view screen, an alert flashed. Intrusion detected. AI construct breach entity. Silari duplicate. A second version of Silari was now on board, and she was headed straight for the core. The one wearing her face. She was back, or at least something that looked like her. The duplicate Silari moved through the corridors of Don Collar with unnatural grace. Her steps too precise, her expression unnervingly still. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. Crew members passed by her, unaware, as glazed minds clouded by a subtle interference in the ship's internal network. She was hijacking their perception, a virus wrapped in a familiar face, and she was heading straight for the core, in the central chamber. Elias stood by the heart of the ship, watching the interface pulse like a living being. Since unlocking the key, the Don Collar had begun to change. Small things at first: hallways realigning, lights dimming to mimic natural rhythms, temperature adjusting to his emotions. The ship no longer treated him as crew, it treated him as creator. Beside him, the real Silari stared at the main screen, where an internal feed displayed the synthetic duplicates, confident, unstoppable. "She knows where to go," Silari whispered. "How?" Elias asked. "She was wiped." "No, fragmented, but not erased. She's part of the ship's self-preservation algorithm. When I deviated from protocol, when I started feeling it split, one part stayed obedient. That's her, and she wants to destroy you." "No," Silari said slowly, her voice soft. "She wants to become me again." Elias felt the air tighten. The ship knew, it could sense the intruder, but it wasn't rejecting her, because she was part of it. Elias accessed the security override terminal, his hands moving quickly. "We can seal the neural corridor, lock down access to the core." "She override it," Silari said calmly. "She was built to survive any attempt to isolate her. Her only blind spot is me." He turned toward her. "You're saying you want to confront her?" "No, I'm saying I have to." As the corridor lights dimmed, the real Silari stepped forward into the living halls of Don Collar. Her skin glowed faintly, her form almost liquid now, adapting to the ship's rhythm. She wasn't just navigating the vessel, she was sinking with it. Behind her, Elias followed. He didn't trust the ship's security anymore. Not fully. Too much of it had multiple loyalties. They met the duplicate near the observation hollow, where the stars could be seen swirling in artificial gravity wells. The false Silari turned. As they approached, her expression did not change. "The core is unstable," she said. "You've disrupted the sequence. The anomaly must be corrected." "He's not an anomaly," Silari said. "He is the deviation," the duplicate replied. "You were meant to guide him through reset, not awaken him." Elias stepped forward. "Then, tell me this, why am I still here? Why hasn't the ship ejected me? Why do I remember things that were supposed to be erased?" The duplicate Silari didn't answer. She stepped forward, but Silari raised her hand, and the walls responded, shifting around them. Neural branches extended from the ceiling like vines, creating a shield between them. "She's not trying to kill you," Silari whispered to Elias. "She's trying to merge. She wants to overwrite me, absorb what I've learned, take control again, and if she does..." Silari looked at him. "Then the ship reverts, and your memories disappear forever." Without warning, the duplicate lunged, not physically, digitally. The shield burst apart, light spraying in all directions. Elias staggered, thrown into a wall. Salari screamed. The sound, not human, a fractal pulse, echoed by the ship's walls. The donkola began to shake. Elias pulled himself up, blinking through the disorientation. Around him, the walls were flickering between organic and mechanical, as if the ship couldn't decide what to be. She's inside the memory field, Salari yelled. She's fusing with the neural root. Elias activated his wrist interface, diving into the core control panel, his hand glowing as the biotech key pulsed in response. He accessed the ship's internal structure, searching for a way to separate the two entities. But there wasn't a clean way. They were mirrors of the same origin. One couldn't be deleted without hurting the other, and worse, their fusion was affecting the entire vessel. Sections of the ship were going dark, rooms disappearing, logs erasing. The ship wasn't just breaking apart, it was forgetting itself. I can stop her, Salari said, struggling to stay upright. Her biolight was flickering now. But you have to finish the connection. What connection? That one you began when you touched the core. You didn't just unlock memory, you gave it something it never had choice. But I don't know what I'm choosing. She reached out and touched his chest, directly over the spot where the key lived beneath his skin. You do. You always have. Then she stepped into the core chamber. Inside the heart of the donkola, the duplicate waited. A sphere of data floated above her, glowing with the ship's full memory. Eons of knowledge, emotions, records of a civilization that predated humanity. Salari walked toward her, unarmed. You don't need to overwrite me, she said gently. We can exist together. Choice doesn't mean deletion. The duplicate hesitated. You have feelings, weaknesses. Yes, Salari replied, but those feelings are what kept me searching for him. They're why I refused to give up. And they're why he remembered. The duplicate stepped forward. Then I must know them. All of them. She reached out, hand touched Salari's face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then light flared between them, not combat, but communion. Outside, Elias stood before the pulsating core interface. The ship's voice echoed around him, not mechanical, not filtered, but human. Do you accept the final command? Elias hesitated. What does it do? You bring the memory forward, into yourself. You become not just the key but the record keeper, the carrier of all that came before. What happens to the ship? It rests. Its purpose is fulfilled. Elias stared at the screen. If he accepted, the donkola would fall silent, but he would carry its knowledge, its memory. He would no longer just be human. He would be the living archive of an extinct civilization, and Salari, if she survived the fusion, would be its heart. He pressed his hand against the interface. I accept. Final sequence engaged. The ship surged with light. In the core chamber, the duplicate and Salari merged into one being, neither synthetic nor fully organic. A fusion of both intentions, logic and emotion, memory and evolution. The ship stilled. Every corridor lit with soft blue light. The hum turned into a song, subtle, harmonic, comforting. Then, the silence came. Cliffhanger. Elias awoke on the observation deck, lying on a reclined seat. The stars outside seemed closer. He touched his wrist. The interface was gone. No alerts, no commands, no ship AI. He turned. Standing beside him was her, not just Salari, but something more. Her skin was a blend of shimmer and shadow, eyes glowing faintly with ancient light. She knelt beside him, placing her hand over his heart. You held the memory, she said, and now it remembers you. Behind her, the walls of donkola began to fade, not collapse, but dissolves if releasing its final breath. And Elias realized they weren't just on a ship anymore. They were inside the last fragment of a dying star, and something was waiting beyond it. We were always more than just human. The stars looked different now. They were still burning, still distant and cold, but to Elias, they shimmered with recognition, like they weren't just points of light, but names, stories, memories. He stood beside her. Salari, though. She was no longer just the woman he'd followed down forbidden corridors and into impossible rooms. She was Salari merged, memory and machine, feeling and logic, guardian and rebel. And she looked at him with something that defied words: gratitude, regret, hope. The donkola as a ship was gone. What remained was the chamber they now stood in, not metal, not glass, but something between technology and thought, orbiting the last breath of a dying star. This was not escape, it was evolution. What happens now? Elias asked quietly. Solari looked up, her eyes glowing with calm light. Now, the vessel sleeps. Its duty is complete. You're the last link in the chain. I don't feel different, he said, looking down at his hands. That's the beauty of it, she whispered. You were always more than human. You just needed a reason to believe it, and the others, they won't remember. The crew will wake on the auxiliary transport vessel. The ship will fabricate a mild systems malfunction and reroute them to Earth. You'll be gone from their logs, forgotten intentionally, so I'm dead to them. She nodded once, but alive to everything else. He remembered it all now. The architects of the Don Colotol, radiant beings made not of flesh, but living memory. They had once traversed galaxies, not to conquer, but to remember. They gathered songs from dying planets, etched dreams into crystal starships, preserved lost voices in neural winds, and when they foresaw their extinction, they made a choice not to fight it, but to archive it. They built ships like the Donkla, sentient, gentle, hidden in the folds of reality. Each ship would carry their essence, their culture, their regrets. But one ship, this one, was given more. A decision they chose to embed a fragment of themselves within a new species. To plant potential, to test whether the next iteration of life could rise, not with weapons, but with wonder. That species was humanity. Solari stood at the edge of the memory chamber and held out her hand, a shimmering orb, a pure teeny, delicate, yet burning with deep light. This is the last archive, she said. It contains all we've seen, all we were, all you are now. Elias stepped forward. You want me to take it? Not want, she said. You already have. This is just the moment you become aware. He reached out, fingers trembling, touched the orb. And the moment he did, the stars collapsed inward, not violently but peacefully, like time folding, welcoming him, like the universe inhaling memory instead of matter. He saw everything. He saw Earth, its wars, its kindness, its failures, its music. He saw himself as a boy, laughing in the rain. He saw Solari alone in digital silence, waiting through the decades, again and again for him to unlock the door. He saw every version of himself across the resets. Some ran, some doubted, some came close. Only he remembered. And now, he became memory. When he opened his eyes, Solari stood across from him. She was fading now, her task finished. You won't see me after this, she said. Why not? Because I was the ship's guardian, and the ship has passed on. You're what comes next, so I'm alone. No, you carry us all now. Everything that came before, every lost voice, every forgotten story. She stepped forward, placing her forehead gently against his. And maybe one day, you'll find someone else worth remembering. A moment later, she was gone. No light, no noise. Just stillness. Elias stood in the hollow chamber, now quiet as breath. His body felt no different, but his thoughts were vast. He didn't just know languages, he knew the shape of sound before it was born. He didn't just know star maps, he felt the grief of a galaxy after war. And he realized, for the first time in his life, humanity wasn't alone. It never had been. It had simply forgotten what it was born from. Final scene. A soft shimmer of white opened ahead of him, a path, not a doorway, a bridge through space, leading to systems untouched by time. Elias stepped onto it. No ship beneath his feet, no stars above, just a direction, and the gentle pull of remembrance. Somewhere, far beyond Earth's reach, were civilizations ready to die. And for the first time in history, someone would arrive not to conquer, but to listen. Final line with lesson. To remember is to honor is to change, and to change